Hi everyone, welcome to the Birds of Carroll County. I'm Chris Bradford and we're back with you again to talk about the birds. Once again I have with me my favorite bird enthusiasts, Sue Yingling and Ann Bradford. Well, you know, these birds all want to eat and we want them to eat with us, so that's why we wanted to talk about feeders today in particular. And of course there's so many kinds of feeders and they all don't work in every situation. I found that out. And we have so many types that we can show these various types and talk about what the advantages are and what kind of birds might be best suited to those feeders. Because some, as we've seen, like one feeder and not another, won't touch them. Some won't touch feeders at all. But I think the first one we should look at is the standard platform feeder. And we'll show a shot of that now.
A lot of
as I understand it, I mean, what I've seen, there are two real basic types. One is the hopper type, which has the glass sides that allow you to fill it with, you know, large quantity and have it come out at the bottom slowly. And it's usually large enough. It has a platform, and it's large enough for a number of birds to feed at the same time. And it's a good all-around feeder. It's the one most people seem to gravitate toward.
Most birds seem to like it.
Yes.
A platform feeder probably attracts the greatest species of birds.
Right. I would guess that too. Although there are different kinds of platforms. I think Ann has one of the types that's just a huge platform. We'll show a shot of that too.
Yes.
Has screen on the bottom.
It's for birds like, I think, like cardinals who are really like ground feeders.
Like the doves?
And I'll sometimes use that in the winter. And if there's snow on the ground or something, I'll put that on top of something.
It's low to the ground?
Well, it doesn't have to be. You can actually mount it on a pole and put it under a hopper type feeder, a platform feeder. I haven't done that, but I think I'd like to try to do that because it would catch the overflow of seeds that now go onto the ground.
In case you have multiple levels going on at the same time, because it's down, you know, about a foot or 18 inches below the regular hopper feeder. You've got the birds at the top, and you have the other larger guys usually down below that like to eat on a flat surface. I think they just don't like to be enclosed. Maybe that's the problem.
Well, there's just not as much room.
I've used the screen from a window before,
Really?
an old
That's
screen,
a good idea.
and put it close to the ground, just kind of stacked up on rocks or bricks, and then something to hold it
Good
down.
idea.
And it's inexpensive, and it gives the birds a lot of room.
And it drains.
And it drains, yeah.
That's really nice.
I made the mistake of using a pan, like a cookie pan, and in the winter, and filled it with seed, and it worked fine until it snowed again or rained or something. And then it was a cookie pan full of water with floating seed. And those guys might be hungry, but they don't seem to care for it when it's underwater.
It's wet,
Although the blue jays will rinse their food off before they eat it.
Something wet is better than not at all.
No food at all, probably.
But a lot of species will use a platform feeder, but the tube feeder is another one that is very popular, but it's mostly used by the perching birds like cardinals. And the cardinals will use it even though they seem to prefer the platform or ground feeding.
Ground, yeah, they always seem to like the ground.
The tube feeder, I know, at least I have one, a couple of each probably, has different size openings for different kinds of seed.
Seeds, yes.
So I have some that work for sunflower seeds, probably the most popular all-around seed. And then I have some that work with the thistle seed.
Yeah, the small, tiny little hole.
Yeah. And so that's like goldfinch heaven. You know, they just sit on the little perches and just peck away at the little seeds all day. It's hard to believe they can get much nutrition from that kind of tiny seed, but I guess if you do it 24 hours a day, you're going to get something
enough of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to clean those out periodically because they can get. If you ever notice, like sometimes it isn't being used, that's sort of a clue that maybe it's gotten
I've had
wet
it get
inside.
kind of impacted in the bottom, because it got damp and it probably is moldy or something. And I guess that's a eternal.
Yeah, they don't. They probably can't even get the seed.
Maybe
you
not.
know, if it's hard and like that.
Yeah, I've had to get a
So you
steel
have to
rod
clean
and
it
clean
out.
them out periodically.
Yeah, you have to.
Sometimes those tubular feeders also come in multiple tubes.
I've seen that.
I have one that has
them.
3 tubes in one feeder. And,
so they can put different things in each tube.
Yes, you could mix it up.
That's neat. I don't have one yet.
And I know you work with gourmet mixes and varieties of seed.
I usually just mix it all together.
And, you know.
Well, I have different kinds of seeds, but I mix them all
Yeah.
together. I don't put them in, except for the Niger seed,
Mm-hmm.
I don't put them in separate feeders. I just mix them all together and put them in a hopper feeder.
Probably a gourmet mix. One other thing about the tube feeder, you know, all those little perches. In the wintertime, a lot of people are afraid that birds' feet will freeze onto the perches, but because of the way the birds metabolize and their blood circulates, their feet won't freeze onto those perches.
They don't have to worry about that. So.
Yeah.
I've heard of sleeves or something. Don't they make plastic sleeves for those?
I didn't realize that birds' feet don't freeze, and I actually bought little plastic sleeves, and they are on that one finch feeder. They're little plastic things that slide over the metal. But I understand now that they really don't. That isn't
I
necessary.
think it's not likely that they'll freeze.
Well, the tube feeder also comes in a style that's made of mesh instead of a solid material, and the perching birds can grip onto the mesh and pull the seeds right through the openings.
And they're large mesh, like
Yeah.
for peanuts, and small mesh for thistle.
And for that matter, there's a mesh feeder that's not even a tube. It's more of a bell shape.
Oh, yeah.
And that's at least the one I've seen. I don't know if they make a smaller version of that or not. But the one I've seen will hold sunflower seeds. And the birds, you know, it's very popular. Apparently it works very well.
I
And
think
I
they're
haven't
easy to
seen
get
any
to.
squirrels on that one for some reason. I don't know. I know they wouldn't like that.
I don't know.
I mean, there's nothing they don't like, as far as I can tell.
That's true. The challenge with all of these feeders is to keep the squirrels.
Right.
That's another whole show.
Yes, that's another another whole subject.
I've used like an onion bag before, a mesh onion bag, and filled it with seeds.
Yes, I have something like that. A little sock, a mesh sock, and that is fun to use. I have a
Now
sample.
those are fine for thistle seed, right?
Yes, for thistle, just for
Because
thistle.
you gave me one a while back, and I
He
put it
didn't
in
like
the seed.
it.
No, I liked it fine.
He
but
said all the seeds
so did
fell
the squirrels. Squirrels chewed a hole in it like day one.
Oh, yeah.
It drained out on the ground, and their mission was accomplished. And I was looking at another destroyed feeder, but
Yeah, well, that is the challenge. Squirrel
make one
wars.
out of Kevlar maybe or something like that.
I guess that's why the metal mesh ones are probably a little better.
And there's another type of feeder that's, it really is basically a tube feeder, but it's got a cage constructed around the outside of it.
Oh, yes.
And that, we're talking about squirrels, is supposed to be squirrel proof because it has openings in the fence, the
That the
grate
little birds
around
can
it.
get to.
It's big enough for goldfinches and whoever, the small birds to get through. They can climb inside and eat away, and the squirrels theoretically can't get to the seed.
How about in reality? Do you think they really
In reality,
work?
I have one of those I got for Christmas. It was called squirrel proof all over the front. The first week they chewed through the wire, the welded part of the wire, and I looked out the window and it was inside the cage eating away. And I always wanted to send a picture of that back to the
manufacturer to get your money back.
Say, did you say squirrel proof? But they're just extremely good at what they do.
They're very persistent. Now, if the cage is big enough around the feeder, it might work. I also got one as a gift, actually, and I looked out the window to see the squirrel hanging, had its feet hooked through some of the rungs of the cage, hanging upside down, shoveling out the seed from the bottom opening.
If they can reach it
No
and get to it, they get it out.
Yeah.
They don't have to have
Where
their
there's
head
a
in
will,
there.
there's a way. And I guess it was because it wasn't, was rather close to the
Yes.
feeder itself. It wasn't a real big
It's
cage.
within arm's reach for,
Yes,
for the squirrel.
or foot's reach or something. Yep, they
And the
managed.
squirrels also like suet.
Yes.
I'd like to get away from the squirrel subject if I can.
It's impossible if you
But,
feed birds.
But suet is, of course, really popular, especially during the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, speaking of cages, cage-type feeders
Mm-hmm.
for the suet as well. And most suet feeders are some sort of metal grate
Mm-hmm.
that allows woodpeckers or nuthatches to cling to the side and reach through and get the suet. There's all kinds of suet these days, bedded with seeds and the kind of custom variety you can think
And there's
of.
a suet that doesn't melt, so that you
Yes,
could put it out
supposed to be
in
for the
the
summertime.
summer if you wanted. I don't normally do that because I think suet draws crows. And I don't really like crows around when they're nesting, when the birds are nesting.
Well, I'm worried about it being rancid during the summer. Do you ever think that's a
Even if it's
consideration?
not supposed to, I would worry that
Yeah.
even if it's not supposed to go rancid or melt, I still would worry that that greasy stuff would get on their feathers and
Oh, that's
in the
something
heat,
else,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know.
true.
I just don't put it out in the summer.
Have you guys ever like made your own suet?
I haven't. I'm
I
not
have.
a kitchen
Have you-
person.
Do you cook the meat, the fat down or something? Isn't it a certain kind of fat?
You can just go to the butcher and get some fat, and it's really kind of a pain to do it. But it's sort of neat to try it out, and you just melt it at a very slow temperature because it's flammable.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if it's too high, I think you could start a fire. But then you drain off the liquid.
Oh.
And that's what you use to mix in your flavors, whatever you want to put in.
Like
if you want
seeds
to
or
put
something.
oatmeal
Another
or
custom mix.
seeds or, yeah.
I have made something
That's
called...
great, except for the cooking
Raisins.
part of it.
Yeah. You wouldn't want the cooking.
Except for the cooking. I'll turn my wife loose on that because that's her specialty.
I have made something. It's actually called a bluebird treat. It is a plain suet, just the white suet, a cake of that, and you would mix it with crunchy peanut butter and some cornmeal. And you mix it all together, and you sort of get like a clay type consistency. And we have a log that my husband drilled holes in about quarter size and maybe an inch or so deep. And you stuff it into those holes.
Oh, yeah. That would
And
be popular.
woodpeckers like that. And we put a baffle over it. But that, again, you would have to use in the winter because it would all melt. And it's also a winter thing. It's called a bluebird treat, but I've never seen the bluebirds
Go after it.
use it.
That's the problem. You need to get the word out. Make sure they know that's for you. So come and
They
get
don't
some.
seem to want to use it.
But peanut butter is a good thing. I mean, you could even I've smeared peanut butter on the trunk of a tree before for the birds.
Have you ever
the
any
squirrel.
negative ramifications to feeding peanut butter?
I haven't heard of any. Have you?
I remember reading a long time ago in a book that it causes something in some varieties, something called egg bind. And I don't know exactly what that is, or if it's limited to certain species, or if it's factual. I mean, that's one version that I read. I don't know where that book is or where I read it now.
Would it only be in the breeding season because they're laying eggs?
I think that's what they were getting at.
So if
yeah.
you would give it to them in the winter, it would be
wouldn't
all
be
right.
bad, maybe. I'm not sure. But you all haven't heard of that.
No.
Have to do an internet search on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing. I've never heard that.
I have never.
One of the things about the little suet cages we were talking about, I used to put them on trees, and the woodpeckers, even the pileator, would come to them. But the squirrels learned to use them, and they would
Yeah.
go through them in less than a day. So we mounted on a pole. We mounted a piece of wood, and we put the suet cage on that, and we put a baffle under it so the squirrels couldn't get to it, and they can't get to it. And we found we had to nail like pieces of bark on the other sides of the wooden block that we had, so that they could get a hold of it, so that they could get a footing. And they used that. So that's something.
The woodpeckers did?
Yeah, the woodpeckers did use it.
Great.
Neat.
As a way of keeping the squirrels away from it. Squirrels did not get to it. The crows did, but the woodpeckers didn't. I mean, the squirrels didn't.
We have to put a patent on that one.
I don't know.
I haven't heard
I'm
of
sure.
that. That's a good
I'm
idea.
sure somebody else has done it somewhere. But it is a.
Well, there's feeders for every kind of bird you can think of, at least
Yeah.
everyone that'll come to a feeder.
All kinds of
And,
feeders.
We mentioned hummingbirds briefly before, but they have their own kind of feeders, and they have their own
Yes.
kind of
Food.
food. The feeders are, I've seen them in, I don't know how many different sizes and shapes, but they do the same thing. That is, they provide a storage for a solution that the hummingbird can
lick.
sometimes they don't elect to light and eat.
They can
Sometimes they'll
hover.
just hover, but it's got something that usually is red to attract them. It's one of their favorite colors. And a way to get to the solution that's inside, some sort of a hole, and they try to make it look like a flower a lot of times because that's their natural food. And once you get that mixture right, and you get it located where they're going to see it every day, you're going to have hummingbirds. In fact,
Usually
it's
if
going to be
they're
like
if they're in your area.
rush hour when they start coming and going regularly.
We've never had rush hour at our house for hummingbirds.
No,
Very disappointing.
well, really, this is only like my second or third year that I've
That's
gotten
great.
it to work, and they are, this year, they're just wild. I mean, we're just in a lucky spot. There are places where they fly through, as I understand, when they're way migrating and so forth. So those people see them by the dozens or whatever.
This must be one of those places.
Yeah, and I think we used to see more hummingbirds than we do now. And I think like maybe in the fall you see a lot of them because they're migrating down from the north and all. So I think you see more hummingbirds this time of year.
Well, the hummingbird feeders, some of them are just flat, disc-shaped almost, with a cover on them.
They're easy to clean.
And
They're,
easy to
they're really
clean.
easy. Yeah, they're really nice to
And
clean.
there's one that looks just like that I had and didn't realize it, and it's not for hummingbirds, it's for orioles.
Oh yeah.
And I should have known because it was orange, not red.
Has probably larger perches.
It had larger
Perches.
perches. In fact, you're the one that figured it out when you saw
Oh,
it.
that was
I had no
that was
idea.
a,
I said,
yeah.
well, I got this hummingbird feeder, and I guess they like the color orange too. Well, orioles like it, but orioles have their own. If you wanted to buy the solution, they sell oriole solution, and I don't know if that's a different mix. Have you read about how to make your own?
I understand we don't have orioles, so I've never done it, but I understand that it's also a sugar water solution. But they also like things like grape jelly,
Grape
I've
jelly.
heard, and oranges. Like if you can nail an orange to a tree, of course, I guess a squirrel will get that too.
But you've never had
yeah.
orioles.
No, we've never had. I've seen an oriole in a crabapple tree, but I've never seen one nesting or one that stayed around.
I've seen them way at the top of our oak trees. It's probably 100 feet high, but never down.
They never come
where you
down?
can see them at the feeder.
No, I would like to.
I
But
guess there's a certain class of bug up there that they like. 'Cause they're up there for a reason. There's no question.
We had one take a bath in our stream this summer, but
oh, that's nice.
it never, I don't think it nested anywhere
Really?
nearby. It's the only time we've
Did you
ever
get any
seen
footage
one.
of it?
We're running at the camera, by that time they're gone.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot to mention that 2-liter bottle feeder. Have you ever seen those? It's like a nozzle that you put on the end of an old Pepsi bottle
It's
or
the adapter, yeah.
a soda bottle,
It's
2-liter soda bottle.
yeah, it's a.
It has 2 perches and
Soda bottle
allows
with
for
an
a feed to
adapter.
come out slowly. It holds a lot of feed, so you would think it would last a long time, but when I got mine working, they discovered it, and there was so many finches on it, I had to fill it every day, 2 liters full of seed.
Really?
Yes, they were.
See.
Because
They were going
it's not
crazy.
like there's a lot of purchase for them.
Nope.
No, there's just
2
two little
perches
openings.
and constant people waiting in line to get their seeds.
It's nice though because that way, if the bottle wears out, you can just unscrew that little
Absolutely.
adapter and use
Put
it on
another
another
one, yeah.
But
big
the problem
soda
with
bottle.
that, somebody gave me the adapter because it's actually my oldest brother who's been using these for years.
Yes.
But the one he gave me was plastic, and the one he had was metal.
Yes, I had.
The
he gave me
plastic
the metal
one,
Squirrels
well,
chewed
both
it.
perches have been broken off already.
I can imagine.
Actually, the squirrels got to the feeder, but they got past baffles, they got past wire, they got past everything I could concoct, and eventually disassembled the whole feeder, unscrewed the nozzle until it drained out on the ground, and then they had, a party. And I am back to the drawing board trying to figure out my next step. I'm still working on that fight, but eventually I'm going to beat them, but
I'll tell you
it
though,
may take 10 years.
they're hard. I got a feeder once. It was called a Yankee Flipper. It had a
Oh,
battery
yes.
in it.
Spins around.
And it spinned around so that when the squirrel got on it, it would spin it around. And finally, somehow the squirrel, we have to keep the battery up for one thing, but finally the squirrel, I shouldn't have had it over the patio. Squirrel knocked it down to the ground, broke it.
It broke it.
So I'm gonna have to see about getting it fixed. But
He stole the battery. He's got it up in his house and a flashlight or something.
there's got to be a squirrel-proof feeder out there somewhere.
Well, we're working on
Somebody will invent one, hopefully.
that. You know what I forgot to mention was that what I call the gate type feeder. Have you ever seen those?
Mm-mm.
It's a big hopper, and it's got
Oh, it's weighted.
one face. The face of it's got openings in it, and a perch, a long perch. And when you stand on the perch, if you weigh more than an ounce, it closes
Oh,
it.
yeah, I have seen those.
So that's considered squirrel proof. And for me, so far, it's been squirrel proof. But it's kind of semi-enclosed though. And I don't think a lot of the birds care for that because it's not as popular as you would think it would be. Because it's nothing but, you know, great sunflower seeds, and you can sit there and eat all day if you wanted, but I don't get quite as much action as I would
Do they
expect.
have to stand on it to
They
actually
stand
get
on
to
the
the
perch,
seed?
yes.
To get to the seed. That's probably why they probably don't see the seed.
No, the seed is open.
Oh, they do.
But if your weight
okay.
is beyond a certain point, it will close the gate.
Oh, it'll
and
close
the,
it. Oh.
You know, so that foils squirrels. I've had them hang from their hind legs up above and hang down trying to get to it, but they never quite make it that way. So it's actually been successful.
That's probably the most successful one I've
However,
heard of.
I have two different ones.
Try one of those.
Had a long wooden perch, and so the first way they defeated that was they chewed the wooden perch off. So
Did
now
you put
can't
another
shut
one
it.
on?
Well, no, because I was going to put a steel one on there that they couldn't chew, and eventually I found another one at the yard sale. So this one's all metal and didn't need any adjustments, so I'm using that one right now. But they so far still work, and I'll keep it up all winter. I'm sure I'll get plenty of action during the winter when food's a lot more scarce. Right now, they prefer these other feeders, I think, but I still see them out there, just not as many as I might have thought. But it's effective up to this point.
Up to somebody to invent something.
What about that plastic feeder that sits right on a ledge, like sits on your, sit either on the deck ledge or on your windowsill? It's like a half moon shape. You know what I mean? Those don't they clip to the window?
I've seen, I've seen some that
you can
did.
fill
like
that
suction
with,
cups.
pretty much anything, I guess. Those are another type of feeder that I think people like them because they are right at your window. So you got the birds coming up to your window. Now, whether the birds like them.
My sister had one years ago. It was kind of a round shape that stuck to the window
Like with the suction cup
with the
thing.
suction thing. And she took a picture of it from inside the house, looking out in the window, and there was a squirrel inside of it, just all curled up like that.
Not squirrel proof.
It was a great picture, though.
Okay, now that we have all these squirrel proof feeders, what do we put in them?
Well, apparently there's a lot more things than I thought there were. When I first started, stuck to the cheap mix that you get at the food store. And
That is not a good idea.
the squirrels seem to like it okay.
But it's a lot of waste, isn't it? Don't they?
It's a lot of
A lot
waste.
of waste.
That's something I found, that red millet, I think it is, that they put in there so
Milo.
commonly, no birds will eat it.
Milo, I think, is the one they don't eat.
Is
Or
that it?
it's red something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I keep seeing the junk left and when everybody's done. I said, what is wrong with that? Apparently it's not a food. I don't know exactly what it is. It's like little BBs.
There's there's several different kinds of millet. I think they like the
there's a white millet and a red
proso
millet.
millet. Yes.
That's what they like.
I don't use, for some reason, I've just gotten into the habit of using certain things, and I don't use millet at all.
Well, I believe now that the cheap mixes just really aren't worth the trouble.
Yeah.
If you really want to attract birds, get some decent sunflower seeds at the very least.
That's
And
the primary.
mixes are okay. I mean, mixes are
Good
because you
mixes,
can
yeah.
attract a variety of birds, but you need to be a little bit particular about what's in it.
Can be a good mix. I use mostly the black oil sunflower, and I mix in some safflower seed, and I actually mix in some of the shelled sunflower seeds. I have peanuts and peanut hearts, which are tiny. And the peanuts themselves I try to break up so they're in smaller pieces.
I'm getting hungry, Ann.
Sounds
we
like
have some of this only trail
sounds like
mix.
a trail mix. That's what it sounds like. And I use something that I get. It's almost like what they call a type of mix that you would use near a patio. It's all shelled. It's shelled nuts and seeds, and it has some raisins in it. And I just use a little bit of that. So it's mostly sunflower seeds with a little some of these other ones mixed in, and I just mix it all together. And that's what I use in addition to the thistle.
And they don't like it, right?
They seem to
They're coming from miles around for it.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's
They
who wouldn't
seem to
like it? Sounds
yeah.
great.
Yeah, they seem to like
But
it.
that's just something you've developed
That-
from
yeah.
trial and error over the years.
Yeah, mhm.
You've got a little something for everybody, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Do you think? Do you know of any particular bird that likes one type over the other, or is there any way to like, separate it, identify
I
them?
would think the smaller birds, it's hard to tell what they're taking. You know, I've sat there with binoculars and looked at them. And like maybe the Carolina wren is taking the peanut hearts. It's taking something small. But I can't really tell.
Well, it could be they like a variety, just like we do.
Yeah. I know the cardinals like safflower seed as well as the sunflower. And that shell sunflower seed, I think a lot of birds would like that. They don't have, some birds that can't open the
Yeah.
black wool sunflower can probably eat the shell sunflower.
But you know, if somebody doesn't want to take the time to mix seeds or doesn't know really what to mix, the best all-purpose seed is that black oil sunflower
Yeah.
seed.
Absolutely.
I use like the bulk of it is that, and then I just add some of the other ones in. You know.
I think it's cheapest by the 50-pound bag, probably.
Yep.
Yeah.
Although the prices have fluctuated a little bit in the last year or so because of agricultural changes of some kind. They're still the best bargain, probably. So if you're filling a lot of feeders, or even a small amount of feeders, but a lot of times, and you get a lot of traffic, then that seems to be the best bang for the buck.
And you know, I keep my bird, I don't know what you keep yours in, but I keep my bird seed in metal trash cans.
Yes.
Because I used to keep it in, you're laughing.
I'm laughing because I had them in a big plastic
Yep.
bucket.
And the squirrels going through.
There's a hole in the top of that bucket this big, big enough for the entire squirrel neighborhood to climb in and have a party.
Yeah,
Well, I got holes in the bottom where the squirrels.
Well,
Yeah.
I
Ate
said,
their
well, I'll
way
move it to the
through.
basement, and they can't have it. And then I came down, there was a mouse inside. And I take him out, I caught him, took him back out in the woods, let him go, came back in, next day, there's a mouse inside. And I didn't check his ID, but I'm pretty sure it's the same guy. Every day he was there for the first 4 or 5 days, and finally I said, why am I doing this? I put a big sheet of heavy plastic over the top and then put the lid back on, so he's not back anymore. But he'd get down to the bottom of the barrel and can't get out. You know, he'd jump like, must be the equivalent of 10 stories for him.
Yep.
And he didn't care, he was landing in sunflower seeds.
But the metal trash cans really work
Yes,
well.
yeah,
Gotta be
they're the
protected.
best thing to use for storage. Yeah, absolutely.
I've even given it as a wedding gift. I'm not sure it's always been appreciated.
Garbage can?
I've given a not the full size, but like the size that's about I don't know, it would hold a 25-pound bag of seed.
Great idea.
So
They
I'll
sell
give the
them.
can and the 25-pound bag of seed and a bird feeder
Oh, that's a nice
and
gift.
a
Perfect.
field
I would
gift,
like that
a field
gift.
guide.
Really?
Field guide. Isn't
I
that
think
cool?
it's a nice
Or for a
gift.
housewarming gift.
Yeah, that's great.
And binoculars and a high-powered camera.
No,
and
no,
a-
they gotta get them
Oh.
themselves.
That is an excellent idea. What are these, when you talk about peanut hearts sometimes, I know they're very tiny, aren't they?
Yeah, if you
And
take
you can buy them separate like
you
that?
buy, yeah, you can. I don't know how, I'm able to buy them separately. If you take a peanut and split it in half, there's a little tiny embryo or something in there, and that is the heart. That's what they call the heart. Somehow they separate that.
So they probably taste better than just the regular peanut. Huh?
Well, they're small. They're real tiny. And I figure, small birds can get that, but can't eat, can't take off the whole peanut.
We managed to get a big batch of peanuts, shelled peanuts, but they were the halves,
Yeah.
and they were, they were so cheap. We said, well, this is cheaper than sunflower seeds at that
Yeah,
time.
the way he was going to.
And we were I was putting them out, and of course the squirrels were coming and taking them up in a truck. And eventually we
green
decided
ears.
they needed to be crushed or something. They were too big for a lot of the little birds. So we were crushing them with the
rolling pin.
rolling pins and everything else. And
Breaking
it's
them up
working out
small.
well, yeah. They seem to like it. If you can keep
Yeah.
if it's a feeder that squirrels aren't getting into. And I tried the other day, I had a big platform feeder, and I filled it with sunflower seeds, and I put these crushed peanuts at each corner just to see if I could see who's getting which one they're going for. And the first ones landed, they landed in the middle, and then they went right to those corners and started taking those crushed peanuts. And that was, they were nuthatches and titmice, I think.
Ah.
So I think
Makes
those are good
sense.
for them
Yeah.
at least. Now, I don't know if they at all feel the same way. But That was a big hit that day.
Yeah, I know the nuthatches will come and they'll come and grab a peanut and try to break it up. So you might as well break it up for them. So.
Yeah. On the other hand, I've got some pictures of the blue jays coming to a deck rail where peanuts are laid out. They're taking half peanuts, 2 at a time, in their beak and flying off with them at the same time. I don't know if they just choke them down, you know, all in one piece or not, but that seems like you could kill yourself on one of those if you're...
I have heard, I don't know this, but I have heard that red-bellied woodpeckers will take seeds and nuts and fly to a tree and store them in a tree.
That probably is true.
I've heard that. Now I've never seen that. I wonder if blue jays do the same thing.
Store them in a tree.
They store them in a tree.
Sure. Well, it's probably like the nuthatches hammering them into the crevices, and they go so far as to take moss and lichens and stuff and cover it over. Now, probably like squirrels, they don't remember 2/3 of them.
Yeah,
but,
that's the
so
trouble.
they hide a lot of them. And, in fact, there was a funny line in the book by John Dennis about how I guess it was a Carolina chickadee, watching the nuthatch burying his food and then coming behind him and pulling him out and letting him drop to the ground.
Oh, they're smart
One after
little
the other.
birds.
Talk about a sense of humor among birds.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious, but you know, that's me.
Smart little bird.
Probably we should talk about some of the special foods like the mealworms. Because you put those out, don't you?
Yeah, I put mealworms out, especially for bluebirds. But other birds will eat them. There's a lot of different mealworm feeders. I use this one that's like a little cup hanging, and there's like a baffle over it that's suspended from this metal piece.
Yeah, we have a shot of this.
And it has holes in it because it's for other seed too, so I have to tape the bottom because the mealworms will climb through those holes.
Escapees.
Yeah, they will. But they, for some reason, don't climb out the sides. So I put that out for the bluebirds. And sometimes you have to train the bluebirds to use it. They don't realize. You have to put it on the ground because they're always looking on the ground for insects. So if you put it on the ground, a lot of times they'll see it there, and then you can move it up to a perch. And other birds, the phoebes have gotten to use that. They've learned. And the titmice and the chickadees, who are so adaptable, they can use it too. And I've even seen a catbird come to it. And I guess the last feed for birds isn't a food. It's a type of food. It's not a seed. It's a sugar water for the hummingbirds.
Hummingbirds.
Yes.
And we've talked a little bit about that already, but I think it's important to mention the recipe
Proportions,
for the proportions, which
Because you make your own.
because you do make your own.
You don't have to buy a
store.
store-bought
Yes.
variety.
Yeah, you can buy a mix, but it's totally not necessary, and it's just 1 part of sugar, real sugar, to 3 parts of water, and you boil the water.
Oh, you use 3 parts.
Oh,
that's
4 parts.
4 parts.
We were using
Yeah, I was
4
going to say that's a
parts.
nice
I'm
sweet.
sorry.
That's a
That's
sweet
very
solution.
sweet.
Probably
They'd
got
like
all the
that.
hummingbirds.
Yeah.
Oh my!
Yeah.
No, you're
So
right.
it's like
Although
it-
I have heard that during migration you can make it a little bit sweeter.
Yeah, that's what I
But
was wondering.
that might have been a little too
I was
sweet.
wondering.
They
No.
need energy.
So it's 1 part sugar to 4 parts water.
And you would boil it. You boil it first so that.
Let it cool off.
Yeah, and then you let it cool. Definitely let it cool off.
And you're only supposed to keep it up for, if they don't drink it all, you're only supposed to keep it up for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, especially in hot weather.
2 or 3 days, really.
Especially in hot
And
weather.
then and change it if they haven't finished it.
And you take it down and you clean the bottles or the the dishes or whatever you have it in.
Ours are easily
refill
being cleared out in 2 or 3 days lately because there's been
That's
so much
good.
traffic. And no honey.
No honey.
Don't use honey.
And no red food dye really, because a lot of the feeders have red on them, and they
Don't need
they
it.
really don't need the red water.
I was just reading about, we have one of those disc-shaped feeders, and it got so faded from the sun. It's really almost white on the top now. And I saw a book that said that you can rejuvenate those with red nail polish, as long as you don't go around the eating part. You know? And that's like a lacquer, and I guess that would hold up under weather and so forth.
Also on the hummingbird feeders, I'm not sure we mentioned it, a lot of times ants will come up and get on them. They sell these little cups that hang between whatever you're hanging the hummingbird feeder from and the hummingbird feeder, and you fill them with water. They're called ant traps, and they're really very useful.
They really work?
They really work. And the thing about them is that I found the titmice and the chickadees again, they love to perch on them and drink water out of them. They're the only birds that do
personal
that.
little drink.
That's their own,
He said, hey, somebody's not bathing in this. I'm drinking this water.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's why they like it. But they're the only birds I've ever seen do that.
Well, you've seen the
Those
other
little
kind
ant
of ant feeder too, haven't you? The one I use is like a bell shape.
Oh, and it goes down.
It's almost like a squirrel baffle, but it's a bell-shaped piece that you hook underneath and on top of. So it's in between the feeder and the hook.
And the hanger, yeah.
And the inside of the bell you coat with petroleum jelly.
Ah.
So if they were to climb down and try and climb up inside, they wouldn't be able to get through there. And that's worked perfectly. Now, originally I didn't want to spend that much money. It was $2 for this. So I tried another trick that I read about, which is put two-sided tape around the post that it's on. Mine's on one of those little shepherd hook things. So I put two-sided tape around the post. That worked for a little while, but eventually the ants that got stuck on the tape were used as a bridge by the other ants who crawled over them. They really did. And I saw the ants and I said, how did you get in there? I spent good money on that tape. And they beat me too. Squirrels beat me, ants beat me.
Yes, I know. It's a battle out there.
So it's a jungle, yeah.
The other thing is like flying insects. I don't know. They do have these little ant guards that stick out from the holes. I've never used them, but
Those little yellow things, aren't they supposed to be bee guards or something?
yeah, bee guards. Yeah, that's what they call them. And I guess they were any kind of flying insect. I've never tried them though.
Well, I got a new feeder recently that had, it was a bottle, glass bottle, had the red plastic base, and had the little yellow bee guards. I didn't know that's what they were, and I said, you know, that's kind of complicated. I wonder if they can find the right opening, you know, to get the drink out. And Mary says, and we didn't get any the first day or two, and Mary says, well, take those yellow things off. So I took them off, and hummingbirds came, and probably not because I took those off, but then the bees came. And then I saw something on the box about bee preventers?
Guards.
Guards, that's right. And I said, oh, that's why they're on there. Put them back. The hummingbirds kept feeding. They had no problem whatsoever with them.
See, once they learned to use the feeder, then you could put the bee guards on.
And the bees kept hanging around, but they weren't getting any, I guess. And they
that.
intimidate the hummingbirds sometimes.
Yeah, they do, and it's a wonder because their hummingbirds are very pugnacious.
Although I've seen hummingbirds go after goldfinches and chase them away.
Chickadees.
I saw one this morning chase a
chickadees.
finch away. Well, you mess with that water, you could be in trouble. We saw pictures of. Did you send me the pictures of the lady feeding the hummingbirds from her hand?
Awesome, wasn't it?
That's amazing. But yesterday morning, the feeder had gone dry, and I went out and filled it. And just as I hung it up, they started buzzing in. And I said, I'm going to stand here. And I was within 12 inches of the feeder, and they were landing and drinking like I wasn't even there. So for me to have been holding that wouldn't have been a huge step. You know, it probably is not hard to do once you get them accustomed to coming.
Your next step.
So are you going to try it?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to disturb them. I certainly don't want to stop them from feeding. And I'm not altogether sure the hand feeding thing is a good idea sometimes. You know, I talked to some people who have an animal sanctuary, and they said they try and rehabilitate the animals with as little human intervention as possible, so they don't get in any way used to people. They think that's the downfall of a lot of animals. So I'm starting to rethink that whole. You know, I used to love having the squirrel climb up my leg and eat the peanuts and all that stuff, but that's, you know, it's just cheap thrills for me, I guess. It may not be the best for the birds, so I'm not sure I'll go ahead with that idea.
I don't know. If I can get a chickadee to feed off my hand in the
Well, you're
winter
special,
again,
though.
I'll still do it.
I would love to do that. Yeah.
You didn't say how your hand was covered in peanut butter. If you had peanut butter on one hand and jelly on the other, you'd have an Oreo and a chickadee.
There you go. Wouldn't that be special?
Special, yeah, I'll say.
You know, it is important where and how you set up a feeder, don't you think?
Yes, very.
Makes a big difference. I mean, sometimes you put it in one location and it just doesn't seem to work.
That is true. Sometimes you have to move them around.
Let's sometimes I think my moving them around confuses the
Confuses the
because they were
birds.
working fine before.
They'll
and I
find
say-
it, don't worry.
Yeah, eventually they'll locate
They'll
it.
find it.
They just won't patronize you, that's all.
They say it shouldn't be out in the open, just all by itself. It should be, I was reading somewhere, it shouldn't be much more than 5 feet away from some kind of cover like a bush or a tree.
Right.
And I notice birds do. Sometimes they'll fly into that tree first, and then they'll fly into the feeder.
I see that a lot, and especially for the birds like the titmice and the chickadees that are going to grab a seed and
Fly
take
somewhere
it
with
off,
Yeah.
take it away to eat it. You don't want them to have to go too far with it.
Oh, that's true. Well, I guess it's
Really?
a prime opportunity for a hawk or an owl or somebody else to come in and just
Yeah.
hit one that's on the feeder, and you know they don't want to be an easy target.
Or a cat that might be hiding in the bushes, which is
Yeah,
one
that's
reason why
another
you don't
thing.
want the feeder to be too close to the bushes.
Yeah, not
Absolutely.
too close.
We've got cats in our neighborhood, and I once in a while will blow my raven's bugle and chase them away, but that usually holds them for a little while. But
They'll come back.
But they keep coming back for either the chipmunks or the birds or both. And I've seen them out there skulking around, and usually when I see them, it's either after I hear a blue jay squawking or nothing's on any of the feeders, and I know there's a reason for that usually. But
Of course, you don't want them too close. I know we had a problem with our feeder back there, that squirrels would get on the edge of the branch of a tree, and if it was too close, they would take a
on it.
flying leap and land right on top of it. So,
well, baffles
There's
aside,
something-
we need to talk
yeah.
about baffles at some point. But
yeah.
I've moved a feeder out into the middle of the yard to keep these squirrels from continually ravaging it. And I looked out the next morning, there's a feeder, it's a platform sitting on top of a pole. There's a squirrel sitting right in the middle of this platform. And I said, how did you get there? And I went out and looked, and the closest tree limb was 16 feet above the ground, above the feeder. And he had dropped,
Wow.
I didn't see any parachute around, but he dropped right onto that feeder from that height, and was successful. He was sitting there eating away, and he wasn't coming as often, but he still was getting it, regularly. So, see, unless you start cutting down all the trees,
Yeah,
you got to be careful.
Yeah, you just have to keep moving it. And another thing too about having feeders and feeder locations, you should be consistent about putting your feed out. And I think sometimes people get discouraged. They put up a feeder and they put seed in it,
Yeah.
and they say, well, we don't have any birds. We're not getting any birds. But I think if you keep it up and keep putting feed in it, you will eventually draw birds.
Well, that's something I've seen a lot around Carroll County is people have tried feeders, obviously. You see feeders at a lot of houses. A lot of people want to do it and have tried it. You see a lot of them that look like they're deserted, like
Empty.
like they tried
They
it
don't have any feed
and
in
gave
them.
up, because they weren't getting any, anybody coming. Now I don't know if it's because of the kind of seed or more the location.
Or they just didn't keep putting it in, maybe.
Yes, maybe so.
They didn't get birds right away,
Inconsistency
so
is
they,
not a draw
yeah.
for birds. 7 to 8 feet, I think, that they mentioned as the ideal height, or from
For
eye
feeder.
level to 7 to 8 feet, because it's high enough that a cat can't jump off the ground, and at the same time, it's low enough that you can still just about reach it. And,
Yeah, reach up and put
know,
something in it.
fill the
yeah.
thing. If you don't fill
Yeah.
it, it's not much good.
Yeah, and if you make it too difficult,
Yeah.
Then you do get neglectful.
Yeah.
If you've got to bring a cherry picker in each time to feed
You don't,
feeder,
yeah, that's going to defeat it.
that's a little more
Yeah,
costly than
yeah.
even sunflowers.
Yeah.
We want to thank you for being with us again. We hope you'll tune in next time and that you'll go outside into your yard and feed the birds of Carroll County.